Hi there, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we are going to talk about Intersection Observer API. So without any delay, let's begin. Intersection Observer is an API given by the browser. It basically lets you know whether a particular UI element is visible on the screen or not, and using it we can perform various animations on the website. Suppose you have a website and in a particular section you have some sets of images, and when your user reaches that section by scrolling, you want to add some animation to those images or to that section. That can be done using Intersection Observer API. So let me go to the website and quickly show you. So I'm here at the CRED website. So let me refresh this, and once it is done, now let me show you. As soon as I scroll and as soon as I reach this point, you can see the images started animating at that point of time. So this thing can be achieved using Intersection Observer API. Not only that, it can also help you to perform lazy loading, which in returns improve the performance of your website. Like let me go to the Pexels website here. So it's an image gallery website. Now let me just open the developer tool, and here I'm in the network tab. Now notice, as soon as I scroll, it is going to return me some sets of fresh images right here, you can say. So this thing is known as lazy loading. As soon as user keeps on scrolling, it makes new API request and it gives you new sets of images. This lazy loading improves the performance of your website, and this thing also can be achieved using Intersection Observer API. So let's get started with the code. So first let me close this websites out here. Let me close this tabs, and now let me go to the VS Code, and you can see here I have three files: the HTML file, JavaScript file, and then the style file. So in the index file here I have some HTML code already written. Here it's pretty much basic code. Here you can see a div container which has a class called user container, and there is individual user card. So each div is assigned a user, and it has got an image and a name. So I have written user 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So basically this is how it looks like: user 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. You can see here, and the styling is present in this style file. So user container, I have used the grid out here, and I have used box header, and I have this active class which basically animates the users. So previously it's in 200 pixel, and as soon as we attach active class in this user class, then in this user div, then what is going to happen is it is going to animate to translate x0, and that's why this card is going to move towards the center. So we can achieve this using Intersection Observer API. So what I want to do here is, as soon as I keep on scrolling and new card pops up on the browser window, I want to animate those cards and move these cards in the center of the screen. So let's get started with it here. So before that, again, I need to explain you Intersection Observer in basics. But before that, I need to grab some UI elements. So let me grab this user container, and I also need to grab the user card out here. So let me write, this is going to be a user container. So I'm just going to write it as user container only. And I'm going to select it using the query selector method. And I'm just going to say, since it's a class, so I'm going to say dot, and I'm going to write a user container. And again, I need to select those users card also. So I just don't want to select one single user card. I want to select all this user card. So that's why I'm going to say user, and instead of writing query selector, I'm going to write query selector all in this case. And since it's selecting all the users, so it is going to be users. Now let's discuss the basics of Intersection Observer. So what does Intersection Observer API does? So basically it has a constructor function called Intersection Observer. Using this, we need to create an object, and based on that we are going to observe an UI element. We are going to say dot observe and grab that UI element, and it is going to observe. So observe basically means it is going to say whether a particular UI element is on the screen or not. So right now we have these two UI elements, user 1 and user 2 card, and both the card are visible on the screen. So when we are going to observe these two card, so that observer is going to return us true value, right? And here you can see user 3 and user 4 are below, hidden in this browser viewport. It is not visible as of now, and that's why if we try to observe user 3 and user 4, it is going to give us false value. But as soon as I scroll up, and since now user 3 and user 4 is visible, now user 3 and user 4 is going to return us the true value. So let us see out here how can we write it. So first I need to create an object, so that I'm going to name it as observer using the constructor function called intersection observer constructor function. And this constructor function is going to take an callback function which is going to have entries. So typo out there, let me write entries. Okay, let me write t, and then after that, since it's a callback function, so let me make an arrow function quickly. And after that, I told you that this object which we have created using this constructor function, we are going to use this object in order to listen a particular UI element. So let us do that. So I'm going to say observer dot, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to say observe, and I need to listen to a particular UI element. So I want to listen to the first UI element, and that I'm going to do using users of 0. So here I'm going to listen to the user 1 card, and it is going to tell whether that user 1 card is visible on the browser window or not. So let me verify that using entries. So entries is basically set of object that is going to return us. So I'm just going to show you it in a minute. So here, let me save this, and then let me go to the browser. Let me open the console. So let me go to the console out here, and you can see it is returning an array 1, and it is having some several values. So let me open this intersection observer entry. So this intersection observer entry we are getting because we are logging out these entries out here. So let me open this, and we can see here it has got something called bounding client rect. So it basically gives the height, width, top, bottom of the object. So in x-axis, y-axis, width and height, you can see all if you open it. So it is going to give that details, the dimension details. And the more interesting properties, we have this is intersecting property. Now it is giving us true value because the user 1 is visible on the screen right now. And another property is called target. So this target is basically returning that particular UI element which is visible on the screen. So right now if I hover it, so it is going to hover this user 1. Now as soon as, let me close this. Now as soon as I scroll up, it is giving another intersection observer entry. Now let me open it, and let me try to open this object, and now you can see is intersecting, it is giving us false because now right now user 1 card is not visible on the browser, right? So it is outside of the browser viewport, and that's why it is returning us false value. And this target that is pointing to the user 1 card. But as soon as I scroll up and bring this user card, now again it is running that, and then is intersecting is giving us true value. So is intersecting basically tells us whether that UI element is on the browser viewport or not. If it is, then it is going to give us true, and if it is not, then it is going to give us false. And this target value is basically that UI element which we are observing. So hope you understood the basics of intersection observer, and right now we will try to animate like that of create website. So let us try to do that. So before that, this is, we know that these users are the list of different user cards. So I need to loop all those users. So let's loop through all the users. So I'm just going to say user dot for each, and then it is going to return individual user that we need to observe. So let me cut this out here, and let me open this, and let me paste it out here, and then instead of users 0, I'm just going to say user, and now it is going to observe each and every single card out there. So here now it is not only observing user 1, but it is going to observe 2, 3, 4 and 5, every single card. So now let us go to the code, and let us try to add that animation. So in order to add that animation, you know that we need to add active class in this user, right? So we need to add that, and then based on that it is going to animate, and it is going to bring this card in the center of the browser. So let us try to do that using JavaScript. So let me remove that, and let me come here, and since this enters intersecting property is going to tell us whether that user card is on the browser or not, and based on that, if that card is on the browser, we want to make it in to the center, right? So that thing we can do out here. So for that we need to loop through the entries, because earlier we did not loop it because we were getting just one UI element. Now we are getting set of UI elements, so that's why we need to loop out all those entries. So I'm just going to say entries dot for each, and it is going to give us every single entry that we have. And now we can use a if statement out here. So we don't need to use as of now. Simply what we can do is we can simply say entry dot target. Okay, you know that target value was giving us that particular UI element, right? Which we are observing. So that's why we are going to say entry dot target dot, we are going to say dot class list dot, we are going to write the toggle method, because we want to add that active class only when that card is on the browser, and if it is not visible on the browser we want to remove that active class, right? So that's why we are toggling out here. So I'm just going to say active, and when do we want to add this active class? Whenever it is visible on the browser. And how can we know that it is visible on the browser? So in order to know that, we are just going to say entry dot is intersecting, right? And then it is going to return us the true or false value. If it is true, then it is visible on the browser, and based on that we are going to add those fancy animation. Now let me save this and let us go to the browser and see. As you can see, these two cards are visible on the browser. That's why it got animated and it moved towards the center positions, right? And you can see the third card is lying somewhere here, and this third card isn't visible on the browser yet, so that's why it is still on the right hand side. But as soon as I try to scroll a bit, see, it got animated and it moved towards the center. And as soon as I scroll it and scroll and scroll, now the fourth card is going to come, and as soon as, if you see even a single pixel, the fourth card is also going to give true value, and then it is going to animate towards the center. But what if we want to animate only when this entire card is visible on the screen? Not if just a single pixel of that card is visible and we want to add animation. We don't want to do that. We want to do only when an entire set of card is visible on the screen, then only we want to add those animations. So how can we do that? So in order to do that, we need to add some extra objects out here. So here it is expecting for some set of options. So here we are just going to write threshold. So by default this threshold value is 0, so that's why even if a single pixel of the card is visible on the screen, it is going to observe it. But if we give 1, then only if the entire UI element is visible on the screen, then it is going to observe, otherwise it is not going to observe. So here, now let me go to the browser and let me refresh. Now you see this entire user 1 and user 2 is visible on the browser, so that's why it got animated, it got observed. But as soon as I keep on scrolling, as you can see, this user 3 card isn't animating yet, because only the half of card is visible right now, and we have given threshold value as 1. That means you start acting only when you are entirely visible. So this third card is not entirely visible, but as soon as this third card becomes entirely visible, now it gets animated. So this is how it is. But now as soon as I scroll up, you can see this user 2 card is not entirely visible, and that's why that active class got removed and then it got floated towards the right hand side. So if we want to stop this, then what we can do is we can unobserve the behavior also. Like we can say once we have observed that UI element, now you don't observe it again and again. So we can do that. And how can we do that? That is very simple. We are going to use an if else statement. So we are just going to say entry dot is intersecting, right? So entry dot is intersecting is going to tell us whether that UI element is visible on the screen or not. And if it is going to give us true value, that means that UI element is already on the screen and we have already observed it. Now we don't want to observe it again. That means we need to unobserve it, and that is very simple. We just need to do entry, okay, not entry, we just need to do observer, because we have created an object out here. So we are just going to say observer dot, instead of observe we are going to say unobserve. And which UI element we want to unobserve? That UI element which is already being observed. And how can we know that? We can know that simply doing entry dot target, and it is going to unobserve that UI element. Now let me save this code, and now let me go to the browser again and let me refresh it. And as you can see, these two cards are visible. That's why it got animated. And as soon as the third card is completely visible, it gets animated. But as you can see, this user to card did not toggle back. Even if it is not completely visible, it is not toggling back because we are unobserving it now. So this is what intersection observer is, and this is how we can add animation. So right here in threshold, if I give 0.5 value, then it is going to observe when half of the card is visible on the screen, even if half portion is visible. So like, let me scroll it down. We need to refresh it first. So now let me scroll it down. Now even if the half of the card is visible, it is going to animate. As you can see, even if the half is visible, it is animating in the user 4. Similarly with user 5, once the half portion is visible, it start animating. So I want to animate it when the entire card is visible, so that's why instead of 0.5 I'm going to give 1 as a value. So this is it, guys. This is what intersection observer is. Now we are going to see how can we implement lazy loading functionality using this intersecting observer. So before that, let me show one example. So here in this random user.me, you need to come here and then you're going to get this free API. So I'm going to use this API in order to show that particular example of lazy loading. So here, if you go to the documentation section, then you're going to get all the details. Okay, it's giving me an error, but no worries, it is already giving me this API out here. So I can just copy this and I can simply use it. Let me go back to the documentation again. Okay, now it is not showing that error, and you can see the entire API details here and you can read it completely. And particularly I'm going to grab this, and here you can see we have this results query and we can just enter the number. Based on that, it is going to give us that much amount of user. So here it is 5,000. That means in a single API it is going to return as 5,000 user, but in a single API call I just want 5 users. So instead of 5,000 I'm going to use 5 out here. So let us go to the VS Code and let us create that lazy loading functionality. So I'm just going to write here lazy loading, and let us create a new intersection observer. So for that I'm going to simply say lazy observer, because we are going to implement lazy loading out here, and we are going to initialize the constructor function intersection observer, and we are just going to get those entries. All right, and then again I just want to give that threshold value also as 1, because I want to take action when the entire card is visible, right? And you know that we are going to get the set of entries, so we just need to loop those entries out here, and I'm just going to say entries dot for each, and it is going to return a single entry. So let me just write entry, and let me create this function out here, and I'm going to write a if statement where I'm going to say entry dot is intersecting, and I'm going to make that API call here. Why am I making API call here? Because I want to make that API call when the last card, the 5th user, is visible on the screen. At that moment I want to make an API call. So here if I go and come back to here, so as soon as user scrolls and as soon as user hit this 5th card or the last card, at this moment I want to make a fresh API call and I want to generate 5 more users, right? So that's why I'm going to say entry dot is intersecting, and I'm going to select the last card and I'm going to make an API call. So how am I going to observe that last card? That I'm going to show you in a letter. First let me make that API call. Here I'm just going to say get user, and I'm going to pass that API which I have copied earlier, and I'm just going to write 5 because I need 5 random users for each API. That's all. Now I need to create this function. So I'm going to create an async function because we are going to make an API request. So I'm just going to write async function get users, and it is receiving a URL. So let me write a URL, and just let's start making a API call. So I'm just going to say let response is equals to await, and in order to make that call we need a fetch function, and it is expecting a URL, so I'm passing it here. And after that we are going to receive those 5 user data from response. So I'm just going to say we need in JSON format, so I'm going to say response.json, and now it is giving us those 5 sets of data. So let me log those data out here. So I'm going to say console.log data. Let me do that, and I'm going to show you here. So I need to observe that last card. So how can I observe that? For that, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to observe here. I'm going to say lazy observer dot, I'm just going to say observe, and I'm going to select the last card. How can I select? For that, I'm going to say document dot query selector. I'm going to do that, and I want to select the user, but I don't want to select the entire set of users, right? I want to select the last card. In order to do that, I'm just going to write last child. So that's why it is going to select for the last card, and this is how we are going to observe the last user card, and based on that we are going to make a fresh API call. So let me refresh it here, and let me scroll it. Now you can see we are not making any API call as of now, but as soon as we hit the 5th user, and the 5th user we have fitted, now after that it is going to make an API call. As you can see, we made an API call and we got promise fulfilled. Okay, and we are still not getting data. We are getting fulfilled because I forgot to write await here. So let me write this await, and now we are going to get that data. Now let me save, and let me refresh the page, and you can see right now it is not making any API call, but as soon as I keep on scrolling, and as soon as we hit the 5th user, it is going to make a fresh API call. And here in results, you can see we are getting fresh 5 users with their gender, name, email, and all those other data. So this is how we can implement lazy loading using intersection observer. So that's it guys. I don't want to make this video longer. I just want to make this video specific to understanding intersection observer and how to implement lazy loading, because now rest of it is pretty easy. You just need to receive the API and do DOM manipulation and inject those cards here. So I just simply don't want to make this video longer. I just want to make this video very much specific to intersection observer, and hope you understood this entire concept. If you understood it, then please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'm going to show up with again another cool JavaScript video.